My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to talk about the luteal phase, or the second half of the woman's cycle, and why it's a garbage fire. And as soon as I tell you to subscribe, we will get to that. So the most recent subscriber-only episode was on how your self-concept as a good lover may be effing up your effing with your wife. And just subscribe. It's a good episode. I got 190 others, including oral sex on women, which is just full of truth bombs, as per usual. And anywho, let us move forward. So when women ovulate, I have a whole podcast on what does ovulation feel like for women. Well, it feels like the angels are singing in heaven and you're in a good mood. And it's just really the capper to, well, wait, I'll get to this in a second. When you actually ovulate, you may actually not feel that well. but the beginning of your cycle, all right, so it starts on day 1. And I'm just going to do this just straight out from the days because still I get so many questions about literally how do you count the days. So day 1 is the first day of your period. You usually have your period for like 3 to 5 days, maybe a little more. If it's much more, go to your gynecologist. You're not supposed to bleed for weeks, obviously. I don't know if you know that's obvious, so I won't say obviously. You're not supposed to bleed for weeks. And during your period, most women feel like shit, you know, but really not as bad as they did before their period, at least mood-wise. You have cramps, you kind of feel like shit, but you don't feel like emotionally as volatile. So let's say you get to like day 5, you're done with your period. This is your moment, you know, this first half of your cycle, your follicular phase is great. You're happy, you have energy, you work out, you got plans that you're going to work out every day. Everything looks wonderful. You're hitting it on all cylinders at work. You're patient with the children. You got more energy in every domain. You want to have sex. You increasingly, by the way, want to have sex until you ovulate, because remember, sperm lives for 3 to 5 days. So ideally, you would have sex the few days before ovulation or on ovulation day. Then ovulation happens. The egg lives for 24 hours. This happens around day 14 of a 28-day cycle. Then after that, guess what? You feel like shit. Many women start to feel like shit right when they ovulate. They get middle schmerz or middle pain. And basically, like, the sperm was supposed to be there already, and so that it could, you know, you could get pregnant. And then if it's not, then the woman just feels like shit after that. And there's a normal distribution. Women who are less sensitive overall feel less like shit. But I've never met a woman who was completely unable to see the change in her mood once she started tracking her ovulation and her period and all of this. So why would nature want you to have sex if you cannot get pregnant? There's no reason. So you dramatically drop in libido, and that's just right after you ovulate. Right after you ovulate, you're like, I don't know, sex seems kind of stupid. I would really just rather read a book, right? That's how your body feels, because why would you have sex? Because you can't get pregnant. And then comes the bad time. So the premenstrual time from about day 21 to 28, remember that the cycle starts again after 28. It's going to start with day 1 of the next cycle when you get your period. But from day 21 to 28, especially the day before your period, you get increasingly more emotional and more emotional. And honestly, some women have PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is worse than PMS. You could be suicidal even. I mean, obviously, if this describes you and you're suicidal every month, go speak to your doctor right away. There's some people that they put on antidepressants and SSRI just in their luteal phase. Your luteal phase is days 14 to 28. And so you may be able to do that, and you may be able to have other options. Some women have to go on birth control. If your mood is swinging to such a hellish degree that you find it impossible to function, then often getting on birth control can help. But again, I'm not an MD. You got to talk to your MD. I'm a PhD. But I do see a lot of people that struggle with this, obviously, because their mood is massively impacted by their cycle. Depressive mood in women is massively impacted by the menstrual cycle. So in your luteal phase, you do not feel like having sex. You really don't even have that much energy. Everything kind of seems down. It's a version of depression. It's as though you're a little bit depressed for 2 weeks out of every month, especially for sensitive women. And a lot of this stuff gets worse as you get older. Why? Well, my pet theory is because when you're young, you're just bouncing from honeymoon stage to honeymoon stage. You're always in a honeymoon stage. Most people are not in relationships that last over a few years, right? And the first one that, when you're young, the first one that you're in that's like that, you marry. So then, you know, that's the first, and then you have kids. So some people go right from honeymoon stage to pregnancy. You don't have your period there. Then you're nursing. You don't get your period for some of that time. And then the first time that you've had like a non-honeymoon stage, oh fuck, this is my real life. I have these real kids. Like there is no more just carefree young shit. Well, that's when you're married. And since there's no other thing to mask the intensity of the mood swings, and also there's hormonal changes after you have kids, etc., then your cyclical mood changes are worse than before. Most women that I speak to, this PMS gets worse after having children and the older you get. Then when you get into perimenopause, your cycle gets all fucked. And some people skip cycles and this and that. Remember to just go to my podcast all about perimenopause. So I don't need to get into that now, but that's the woman's 40s because menopause, the average age is 52. So at that point, then you may not even be able to track your period anymore the same way because they lengthen, they shorten, they do all sorts of wacky shit. But the point being is that 14 days before you get your period and 14 days after the last period, if it's a 28-day cycle, you are in your luteal phase. And a lot of my work with guys, I'm like, do not take this serious personally. Like, you cannot take it personally that 2 weeks out of every month she feels like shit. Don't you think that's worse for her? I mean, you know, obviously it's worse for her. Many men have like profound, like, you know, the opposite of an empathic rupture. They have like an empathic blossom when they realize that their wife feels like shit for half of her life while she's menstruating, you know, and I mean, that's real. And it's true. I mean, it's depressing if you think about it, you know, but it's just what it is. But the point is that especially if your wife is a highly sensitive person or if she's had any struggles with depression otherwise, then this stuff is going to hit her even harder. And so it's not about you. She doesn't hate you half of the month. I mean, she may feel like she does. But if you guys are on top of this and you both see, oh, your cycle, your mood goes up and down with your cycle, then you can work together. You can work together on being close during that time and understanding the impact of this hormonal change that happens every single month. And it's like hacking the whole relationship in a sense when there's women who are very impacted by their mood and they realize there's memes about this, like, oh, when you want to divorce your husband and then you realize that you're getting your period tomorrow. So there are many women who are aware of this, but many women aren't. And when they become aware of it, it can be life-changing. The impact of the menstrual cycle on mood cannot be overstated, again, particularly for women who have struggled with depression or who have struggled with mood issues in the past. It is huge. And it can make you realize that you don't hate your life, you don't hate your husband, you don't hate your kids, all of the different things that people think. You don't need to get a new job. You're just about to get your period. And so then what do you do during this time? Well, you don't have sex. That's something. You know, if this hits her really, really hard, then most women don't want to have sex in that time. They really don't. It feels painful. It feels like you're never going to get turned on. And so don't. Try to have sex mostly in the follicular phase when nature is helping you. And that's the God's honest truth. And some women want to have sex like the day before their period. There's a change in hormones. That means that some women really want to have sex like literally the day before their period. It brings on their period, they feel, and who knows if it does or not. But that's like a common thing is that the switch, because there's all these different sex hormones, right? Estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And if you Google a chart, you can see how these go up and down, hormones over the menstrual cycle. And so some women feel more easily aroused the day or the days right before their period. I remember that episode of Roseanne when I was young, where she was, it was the week before her period, and she was screaming at Dan all the time, and then she wanted to have sex. So that's real for a lot of women. But do not expect to have sex more than a little bit, maybe once in the whole luteal phase, but then you should be doing it more. And for some women, they like to have sex during their period. Some women don't. Some women feel that it eases cramps. Some women don't, but what I've seen from all these years, 15 years now in practice, is please try to work with nature, Do not try to work against nature. Don't try to think that your wife's supposed to have the same sex drive all the time. That's as silly as when thinking that you ought to be having vacation sex all the time when you're not on vacation. I just did a podcast episode about that. When you're trying to make your monthly awesome sex, which is usually your pre-ovulation sex, into the norm, or your vacation sex into the norm. It was like a couple months ago by now, this episode. But the point being, try to work with nature. If she is really not in the mood, if she's really not in the mood for 2 weeks, then if she wants to be nice and giving, maybe she could try to get in the mood with responsive desire. But if she feels like she's going to jump out of her skin in the week before her period, well, my advice is don't push that, right? Why would you? If you don't, then you're probably going to get laid a lot more in the follicular phase. So it can, sometimes it's feast and famine. And imagine if you don't like it for you, it feels much worse for her. So people are like, oh, well, how could the guy go without? How could she go without her sanity for like 2 weeks? Like, that sucks worse. So try to empathize. And of course, the woman should try to empathize so that at least in the first half of the luteal phase, which is 2 weeks, maybe she does still want to have sex, or at least it doesn't feel as awful as it does the week before the period. Or then she could track and see that the day before the period, she usually wants to have sex. Whatever. But try to work with a natural drive. Try to work with nature. Going against nature is like, it's unnatural. Because it is. It's like trying to feed somebody when they're not hungry, when you know they're going to be hungry like tomorrow. It's like trying to force feed your kid dinner and they don't want dinner, but you know they're going to be hungry for breakfast, but then somehow your rigid mind says they got to eat dinner, and they aren't going to be able to sleep without dinner, even though that's like never happened. People get rigid about things having to be the same every day, particularly if they tend toward anxiety. So the worst is a man who tends toward anxiety, trying to hack his wife's sex drive and make sure she has sex exactly the same way all the time at the same pace. That is not about her. That's not about connection. And it's not about anything real in the universe, because she doesn't want to be having sex at all because her body's telling her not to, right? This can also be a big epiphany moment for women who are on hormonal birth control, who are like, well, I never really want to have sex that much. You think it could be because I'm not ovulating? Well, yeah, of course. And that's why people explore other birth control options. And of course, as always, talk to your medical doctor. But there's a lot of women who get off hormonal birth control and feel that their drive has come back and that they never really knew what their drive was. So I mean, that's very, very important to think about as well. And I have a podcast episode, Other Reasons Your Libido May Be Low, and it talks about meds and it talks about birth control. So that's important. Don't try to go counter to natural impulses. That never really works out. You want your wife to be with you because she's attracted to you. She can't like fake attraction. And so half of the cycle, she's not that attracted to anyone. So then why are we trying to shoehorn in more sex then? You could have sex, sure. And younger women obviously have higher sex drives as a main effect. And then they don't feel this stuff as much, as I said. But if it's really terrible for her the week before her period, do not add to the problem by expecting her to have sex with the enthusiasm or at all that she did the rest of the weeks. It's 1 week. And then also, as you could also talk about as a couple, having sex in the last couple of days of the period or the last day of the period. Sometimes women are open to that and men aren't. So then the men want to get outside of their comfort zone a bit and put a towel down and have sex because maybe she's in the mood. A lot of women are, and they say that the guy gets grossed out by period sex. Well, everybody's got to get outside their comfort zone for a marriage to work. So the woman could try to do it in the luteal phase. Last couple of days are hard unless you, like Roseanne and many others, want to have sex then. But, at least after ovulation, it feels silly, but whatever. You could remember you used to like it. Try to let responsive desire kick in. But is this going to be when you have most of your sex? Hopefully not. Because if you have most of your sex when she's really not in the mood, then she's going to start associating sex with not being in the mood and with bad things, as I talk about over and over in all my podcasts on, you cannot force a woman who's just laying there and pretending to be dead to have sex with you because obvious reasons, most importantly, because she will start to hate you, right? And I have a whole podcast about that. All right, I hope this was useful. Try to move with the natural rhythms of the body in every which way whenever you can. And if you're a woman who has put these artificial restrictions so that the guy's never allowed to say that he thinks you might be getting your period, certainly don't be a dick. If she says to you, you forgot my birthday, don't be like, I think you're on your period. Like, hello. But if you yourself realize that you're more reactive in the week before your period, which you probably are, then it would be really good for your marriage for you to be able to say that. I'm in a bad mood. I don't feel well. My period is coming within the week, and I have felt down and I have felt depressed. And so that's why I'm in this mood. And just saying something like that openly can be transformative for your marriage, could allow your husband to be more open and vulnerable when he's struggling, and can really bring you closer because you're being honest and you're making a good faith effort to own your contribution to any marital discord. All right. Hope you guys like this, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great day, guys.